Greetings, everyone. I am Dr. Wolf, and I just watched Student Counsel. Oh, wow. I am so glad that there are several episodes this season that are really giving the MLP staff their A game. Holy cow, this was just so much fun. On top of that, half the time I didn't know exactly where they were going with all of this. That makes it even better. And yeah, honestly, the lesson, while not as focused on as I was expecting, it still is quite relevant. And yeah, it really got me to pause and think about how I do things too. So all in all, wow. I mean, goodness, this has got to be one of the best entries this season easily. Oh, wow. At any rate, Student Counsel, when I read the synopsis for this quite a while back, I was thinking, oh, is this going to be an episode where Starlight gets overwhelmed by the number of students that keep coming and asking for her help, and she's trying to figure out what's the best way to help them on everything? Well, yeah, that is part of it, but it seems a little minor compared to everything else that's going on here. I mean, it makes for a great setup. Starlight being obsessed with her job to the point where she really can't let go of anyone who's trying to ask for her help, even in the middle of trying to spend some time with Trixie. And yeah, Trixie is very quick to get annoyed at all of the interruptions, and yeah, it's great how she keeps escalating the problem to the point where she knows the only way to get Starlight's attention is to knock on her door in her office. That's actually pretty smart. And I figured that the rest of the story was going to be all about trying to balance between Starlight and her students and Starlight and Trixie. And by itself, that would have made a fairly effective story, and one I don't think we've really touched on that much in this series thus far. However, the way that all of these other characters are integrated into the story and not a one feels like it's just being tacked on, that's impressive. That is really impressive. I don't know exactly how they came up with so many differing characters and all their differing motivations, and yet somehow it just works. It really, really works. Focusing on the relationship between Trixie and Starlight. Yes, Trixie can be a rather self-centered individual, and it's great that she is the one who's kind of escalating the conflict and really pointing out what's wrong with the situation. Because you can relate to what she wants here, that Starlight is continually pushing aside any time spending with her friend, and yet you can really relate to Starlight wanting to help wherever and whenever possible, and being so dedicated to her position as the student counselor. It's really not the kind of situation where either Trixie or Starlight are completely in the wrong or in the right. And I love stories like that, where you can put yourself in either one of their shoes and say, yeah, I can understand that. And yeah, maybe not everything that they're doing is the right choice. And yet, I can really relate to each of their motivations. I think that it was a great idea to make it so that the students are constantly hounding for help. And yeah, that one guy at the door who kept getting brushed aside by Trixie. That was really fun. And yeah, you do feel a little sorry for the guy. He never did get his problem resolved, did he? And giving very short cameos to most of the Student Six. Yona was only mentioned in passing, but problems between Gallus and Smolder, and Ocellus having difficulty figuring out her identity. You could have easily made a story about that right there. I don't know if the MLP staff are ever going to quite address that, given that Season 9 is almost halfway over. But given Starlight is finally able to make it to this party, finally putting her hoof down and saying, you know what, it's spring break, my office is closed, I'm sure that you can figure out your own problems in this case. I have my friends that I've been neglecting and I need to spend time with. And yet when a major problem arises, given that she neglected this one student in this one time of need, yeah, I can so relate to what Starlight is going through here. How she's continually thinking that she is the worst ever because she failed in her duty when it mattered most. Or at least that's the way it seems. Because, yeah, I was worried that, holy cow, they're gonna go after a cockatrice? Holy cow, they're gonna go after a whole herd of cockatrices? Oh, wow. There is quite a bit of tension in the third act of this episode and trying to figure out exactly how they're gonna get out of these little scrapes. And let's talk a little bit about Maud and Mud. That was genuinely surprising that Mud makes a return after all this time. I was worried he might be a one-and-done character, that we might never see him again, but thankfully the dynamic between these two still works. It's still fun. And early on, you can tell that the other characters are kind of getting fed up with his technically lines all the time. Even Maud gives him a stare down at one point. And yet, she still loves him completely. The fact that they can always be exactly what the other needs, even in the worst of times. I know it was just played up for laughs when Mud was turned to stone and Maud just keeps saying lines like, "You complete me. You got the hunk part right." There was just so much fun comedy throughout this entire story. And yet, this wasn't just for entertainment value either. Integrating all these other characters without any one of them feeling tacked on, that's great. Having an entire story without a single appearance from any of the main six or Spike, that's also impressive. It still managed to keep me really invested. And then the lesson. Wanting to balance between your work and between your friends or even family if you want to use that, that's a really tricky question. How much is too much? Where do you draw the line? I mean, it's constantly shifting on exactly what is best for each situation. And I like how this episode shows that it's an ongoing effort. It's a struggle that will never completely go away. I can admire that Starlight is so dedicated to her job as a student counselor that she is really devoted to making sure that every one of her students are taken care of for whatever they need, big or small. I can admire that. And yet, Trixie knows that this is going too far. Even as self-centered a character as she is, she has a really good point. And I like the fact that without any encouragement from anyone else, she was willing to apologize and say, "I shouldn't have been so invested on getting you to be away from your students." And by the end of it, Starlight is shown that she doesn't always have the right answers. She doesn't always know how to help each student, even though she is that devoted. And yeah, a lot of the ending threw me for a loop. The fact that a cockatrice can be kept as a pet? I think she called it Edith? I never thought that a cockatrice, from what we've seen in the series thus far, would ever want to be close to anyone else. They seemed like very solitary creatures who would turn anyone or anything to stone if it ever looked at them the wrong way. So that's really interesting. The fact that she now has a pet cockatrice. I'm sure it's far too late into the series that we see this creature again. It's possible, but it seems a bit of a long shot. But I like the idea that because this herd of cockatrices is causing such a major problem, and yeah, even Maud is completely unwilling to abandon Mud after he's been turned to stone, and yet they turn it into a joke anyway with every single comment she makes from that point forward. It's just plain fun. I like all of the callbacks to the Maud couple, Uncommon Bond with Sunburst showing that he still very much wants to have his antiques, and even a little bit from Surf and Turf with the appearance of Terramar. I didn't expect to see him again, but given that he's Silverstream's brother, yeah, I really should have expected to see him again at some point, and I'm glad that they shared a little bit of on-screen time together. There was just so much to enjoy, so much to talk about, so much to make me want to go back and watch it again. I'm kind of going back and forth between this and Frenemies as my favorite episode thus far, but oh, I don't know. I think Frenemies just edges out a little bit more because I really love a good villain song. But this is still excellent. Student Counsel is definitely one of the best entries in this season thus far. And honestly, I'd love to see more like it. I do hope we get more of the truly entertaining and yet thought-provoking stories in the future. I do love that the MLP staff are kind of bringing forth their A game for this final season. But then, what do you think? Given all the different characters that are showing up in this story, which one is your favorite? Because all of them have so many great moments. Oh, and what do you think about the lesson of trying to balance between a job that you feel so devoted to and your friends or perhaps even family who need your time as well? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because as always, I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.